In this 8th edition of our Resin Art and Bezel series, let's bend a few bezel rules together. But how do you design inside a square bezel? Should I use the exact same design for every frame? Or does the metal finish change the way the resin reads? To understand what's truly possible in this space, I reviewed over 1,000 different bezel designs and studied my favorite artists. Inspired, I used beginner-friendly techniques and simple crafting supplies to create 6 unique pendants, and I'm so excited to share exactly what I learned with you. My first step is the design to scale. To keep these themes comparable, I have traced the outlines of my bezels to sketch into, including a template for a freeform square pendant I'll be crafting from scratch. Each pendant design will be unique to its finish. I like to start with the design skeleton, planning the placements of my inclusions and embeds first, before I finalize the color palette of pigments and inks. This step helps me visualize the end better. However, it is not a necessary step for many crafters, but for us today, it's the map. At the end of this journey, we will have made these sketches into a reality, and I thoroughly enjoy this process even with detours. Next, we gather our materials. This tactile 3D pendant will use steampunk gears to capture the essence of time. To create this deep sea scene, we'll use nail art embellishments, alcohol ink, and a glow-in-the-dark surprise. We'll use iridescent shell inlays and mica pigments to create this mosaic theme pendant. Frozen time is a medley of salt, alcohol ink, chameleon powder, and crushed glass glitter. This cloisonné inspired piece will use wire work and vibrant solid pigment colors. My freeform bezel will use this leafy skeleton, layers of UV resin, and a touch of mica powder. These will be cast using a mix of epoxy and UV resin. But before we start, there is one crucial step: prepping the base. I find it essential to back my bezels with heat-resistant tape. It handles the curing heat perfectly and peels away to leave a glass smooth finish. I also add a cardboard base to each one. Handling a bezel full of uncured resin with gloved hands is a recipe for disaster. The cardboard allows me to move and rotate my work freely without touching the piece itself. My bezels are prepped, designs ready, and the resin is mixed and degassing. Let's get crafting. Our first design for this open bezel uses green alcohol ink, chameleon pigment complementing the bronze finish, some crushed glitter, epoxy resin degassed and ready to pour, and a secret ingredient. Geodes have rings. In this case, the alcohol ink and the pigment mix will create concentric rings. Green will be our outermost layer, but on its own, it looks a bit too much like plain glass. I need it to mimic the natural crystalline texture found in geodes, so I'm using some chunky sea salt. This is the secret ingredient. The size is perfect, not too big, not too small, and it has the exact crystalline look. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if this mix will work or stay faithful to the geode vibe I'm chasing. We'll just have to wait and see. If you attempt this, make sure that the salt crystals are thoroughly coated. Otherwise, it will attract moisture and make the pendant misbehave long after the resin has cured. Next is the colorful chameleon layer. I really like this particular mix, especially for this pendant. I think it is working really nicely as a color complement to the bezel finish and the green crystalline border. All our rings are in place. Finally, some chunky glitter for the center, and we let this cure for a day. I am honestly blown away. I was skeptical about how the pigments would move in such a tiny space, but that concentric flow totally prevailed, pulling the eyes right into the center. Let's add a quick finishing coat to the back and let it cure. The texture on this front side is beautiful. Look at those undulating salt crystals around the border. Even that unintentional little gap just makes it look more natural. Because this piece is completely reversible, I don't want to lose this amazing tactile feel. I am skipping the top dome entirely. Would you have domed this side anyway? Let me know in the comments. This piece is officially ready for assembly. I will attempt to frame a memory here. The summer of 2006, when I visited Paris for the first time, walked the streets, drinking the visual treats offered by the wonderful city. The technique I will use here is a little similar to the cloisonné technique, but way more simplified to suit the scale and material. First, I will cut the wires to size and secure them on the heat-resistant tape. I'm creating a silhouette which might be recognizable to most or just remain a simple swooshing design. With my wires in place, I will fill it with some summer colors, the ones which people suddenly start wearing when they are on a vacation. The resin has been sitting for a while and has reached a nice honey consistency, which is perfect for mixing with our solid pigments. I'm hoping this thicker viscosity will prevent the resin from spilling over, unlike what happened with that piece pendant in my heart-shaped bezel video earlier this year. This is an ode to a backpacking memory from a couple of decades ago when I was a bit lost. The light was falling fast and the map didn't make sense. We used physical paper maps back then. Suddenly, through a gap between the buildings, I saw the tower, only the top, lit up like a lighthouse. I just kept following the light till I was out again by the Seine. Good times. This is an ode to the Eiffel Tower, an engineering marvel, all beams and bolts, but yet so beautiful in its entirety. This can be done more easily with thicker wires and with alcohol inks for more transparency. I use solid pigments here for a retro effect, literally looking back to the styles of the past to inspire this design. Now it's off to cure for a day. The base colorful layer has cured and I think it's looking super cute. Now I'm going to layer the side of the pendant with some clear epoxy. Before I set it aside to cure, I'll add just a little bit of translucent holographic glitter in colors that sort of match the base. It's just enough to beautifully catch the light without disrupting the lovely pastel shades of the design. This pendant is starting to come together nicely. The glitter is subtle and the coloring is even. Let's seal and finish the surface. I do love a nicely domed piece. This is just simple and stunning. The pendant is ready and it even has a beautiful touch of translucency. Before we dome and seal the back though, I need to take care of a little bit of flashing around the edge of the bezel. Because this piece is completely reversible, I have to ask, which side do you prefer? The glitter side with that subtle bezel rim shadow, or the other side where the design is completely flush at the top? This turned out to be such a clean and happy design. This generously proportioned square bezel will be the setting for our ocean themed pendant. First, I'm going to prepare an epoxy resin mix and create a light background to craft the design on. Because I want a bit of gradient, I'm going to cure this layer on a slope. You'll see towards the end why this step is a little bit of magic. This is a deep sea scenario, so I will embed some ocean themed nail art to set up the scene. Finally, I'll use some mica pigment to break up the monotonous background. I'm not sure how much the pigment will move around. Maybe these streaks will get diffused as the resin cures, but I was just too curious not to try. We'll find out in a day. The base has set, it is time for the blue alcohol ink and epoxy resin layer. Silver and blue are a fantastic combination and a great way to capture a slice of the ocean with depth creation techniques. Because the base was at a slope, this layer is naturally darker towards the bottom and thins out towards the top. But I want the gradient to be steeper, so I will tint the bottom part with a touch of alcohol ink. Once the gradient seems acceptable, I used a little white sinker alcohol ink to create a wave detail. Since the resin is not too viscous, I imagine that the sharpness of the waves might be lost as it cures overnight. Now we add a tiny turtle charm to this piece, keeping it a little off-center and letting this layer set for a day. The white pigment of the waves has made a very interesting pattern. Let's dome this face now and seal this lone turtle in epoxy resin. It has been a few hours and my resin has set. It is no longer flowy. So I'm going to embed the turtle's bestie into this soft resin. This technique is immensely satisfying. Watching the resin ripple around the turtle is pure joy. Now my curiosity is piqued. The resin ripple form might hold around the metallic bezel, but can it hold waves if I carve them directly onto the surface? Let's find out. It seems this technique only works against another material. Something about the surface tension. In the case of carved waves, it was resin against resin, so it just evened out beautifully, creating a stunning finish, I might add. This back is gorgeous. It has that undersea sunlight quality, and you can even see the turtle silhouettes. This is ethereal. I'm floored by my own creation. Both the sides hold their own and have their own vibe, so I'm going to declare this pendant as reversible. Let's apply a doming coat to the back and finish this piece. I love sea turtles because they are basically living history. They have been navigating the oceans using the same tides and moon cycles for millions of years. So to me, they are the guardians of the steady passage of time. The finished piece is ready and it is so pretty. And it glows. Remember the first layer we cast? That was glow in the dark powder. There is so much serenity in this scene. Two friends exchanging resin hacks under the filtered sunlight in the depths of the ocean. The technique we are going to use here is of the mosaic effect. I am going to be placing these shell pieces into the bezel frame to create a mosaic-like composition. I have a few colors here, so I will choose some shell chips of suitable size and shapes from 3 color groups, just to keep the composition interesting. Let's populate this bezel with these chips. I will place them onto the heat-resistant backing tape to ensure that they don't move around after the resin has been poured. There is just one crucial detail to be taken care of during this process, which is that the pieces themselves must be pressed into the tape properly so that the resin doesn't flow under and cover their iridescent beauty. Which is why I made sure that none of the pieces were curved and would lay flat on the tape. I feel that this bezel finish works fabulously for the design, as it silently frames the resin art without calling too much attention to itself. Personally also, I prefer this finish in jewelry over goldens and the coppers. All the pieces are in place. You can see the making of a gradient effect moving from purplish pieces at the bottom to the yellowish pieces at the top. It is a subtle detail. The background will be a black mica pigment mix. The dense pigment play looks awesome and will make a great background as well for this pendant, while providing the necessary contrast for the shell pieces to shine. Look at that. This is so pretty. Let's seal the surface with an epoxy top coat. This design reminds me of the grandparent generation from when I was young. Perhaps because of my associating this look with the mother of pearls boxes which they used to have and cherish. The back doesn't really need to be sealed, but because the surface is flat, a dome would certainly give it a beautiful finishing touch, making the pigment play pop just a little further. We let this cure for another day and it is ready for assembly. Look at that mica play glimmer. I absolutely adore how the mosaic has turned out. Even the background is catching the light. This is a gorgeous pendant. Since the design theme is all about time, how could I not make a bezel in one of my favorite styles? Let's get geared up and make this coppery bezel into a fabulous steampunk pendant. We start with a dry run, choosing the pieces that will make up our steampunk design using this medley of light copper and antique copper finishes. The technique I will use for this copper pendant is ridiculously simple, and the result is way too elegant for the effort put into it. I will just add the gears into the frame, layer by layer, all the while making sure that the spacing and overlaps happen as a balanced composition. Not too heavy and not too crowded or not too spaced out. This was the first layer. We let it set for a day. Picking up right where we left off yesterday, I'm going to again map out the design first, to make sure everything is visually balanced before casting the next epoxy layer to embed the gears. The smaller beads look especially cool here. They almost seem to float, giving the whole piece a fantastic sci-fi look. After another day's wait, we are finally ready to peel off the backing tape and admire our handiwork. This is already looking gorgeous, but what really elevates this piece is one simple design choice: doming just one side with some epoxy resin. This is the back of the pendant, and giving it a pebble smooth finish will make up for a pleasant experience against the skin. You can absolutely use UV resin for this step, but because this is a transparent piece with so much happening inside, I need the dome to be perfectly level and completely ripple free. It costs an extra day of cure time, but for a finish this flawless, it's a price I'm more than willing to pay. I am curious. What do you think of this wonderful tactile finish? Would you have done both the sides? Let me know in the comments. Let's jump right into the no-bezel pendant technique, where we'll embed this leaf skeleton into layers of UV resin and build up a square pendant. This freeform resin crafting is all about layering until we reach the desired bulk. I'm going to place the hoop into one of the layers right now, tucking it between the two leafy layers so I don't have to drill a hole later to make this a functional pendant. The piece is very light and I think it could use a little more weight and direction, so I'm going to dust it with some black mica pigment, moving from darker bottom to a lighter top. This won't actually make the piece too dark, it'll stay largely translucent, maybe a little grey shimmer when it catches the light, but it will really help those leafy veins pop. Now, while this looks interesting, it still needs a little work, a little cleanup and shape up. So I'm going to even out the sides. I'm using the bezel here just to keep the shape comparable. Now for a little sanding to smoothen out the rough edges, and we are ready to seal this piece. This freeform pendant was a masterclass in bezel-less UV layering. This design is incredibly subtle, airy, and surprisingly easy to make without a metal frame to hold it. I think I will make a matching pair of earrings using this exact technique to complete the set. Our copper bezel was all about 3D layering and metal matching. By building up tiers, we gave a flat frame incredible dimensional height. Leaving one side completely tactile adds a rugged industrial charm that perfectly matches the steampunk theme. We focused on depth creation using alcohol inks and glow pigments in this silver bezel. The gradient, the subtle ripple effect, and the layered nail art embeds all came together beautifully to create a mesmerizing deep underwater scene. For the black frame, we took a completely different approach with organic mosaic inlays. I love that such a straightforward technique yields such an elegant high-end result. The top dome is absolutely flawless, acting like a magnifying glass for the shimmering shell pieces underneath. Then we have the bronze bezel featuring concentric layering. Check out the color distribution and the translucency of this faux-geode with two completely different experiences. A raw bohemian vibe on the textured side and a sophisticated artistic composition on the glossy domed side. For the gold frame, we tackle resin cloisonné, translating a high-precision, traditional metal crafting technique into a beginner-friendly resin equivalent was such a fun challenge. The real clincher here was using these bright pastel colors. It completely transforms the look into something light-hearted and summery. For these pieces, I will mostly be using hardware that complements each specific frame finish and design, like this copper-colored chain for the steampunk pendant. It makes for a brilliant addition, with the metallic cord beautifully complementing the steampunk look. Capturing time in resin, I might have gone a bit too literal with this design, but it looks fantastic. I'll do the same for this deep sea themed silver pendant. The chain works seamlessly with the silver bezel and the turtle embeds. This time the theme was about history of time on Earth, the ocean with no memory, completely at peace. But time waits for no one. All things must one day pass, like these beautiful skeletal leaves, which must have been lush green at some point. I'll pair this subtle design with a neutral grey cord. This light brown cord is a perfect complement to the ultimate time capsule, the geode, completing the earthy vibe of this bronze pendant. For the throwback retro vibe, I'm going with this thin yellow cord, which actually makes the pendant look even chunkier and cheerful, like my memory. I think keeping the tower silhouette completely clear was a neat trick. I am so glad I didn't color it in. And finally, a shout out to the generations of the past with this shell mosaic pendant. With its timeless glimmering shells, the natural choice to complete this piece is a classic black cord. Even with the rigid frame of a square, the geode has bloomed beautifully inside the bronze bezel, while the tranquil scene of these deep-sea turtles is just so endearing. My memory of past adventures is colorful like this pendant and warms my heart, while the knowledge that life is ephemeral and will eventually be swept away like a leaf in the wind helps me keep perspective. This steampunk piece is a beautiful reminder to live in the present moment and marvel at the mosaic of life, pieced together with colorful memories, broken yet complete, painful yet pretty. Square bezels are an awesome chance to craft your own chunky jewelry, letting you max out any resin idea. This video was just a teaser to demonstrate everything you can achieve. Want more shapes? Check out my other bezel guides linked in the description. Hope this inspired you to try larger than life themes in bezels. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day. Picking up these shell pieces delicately wasn't working out. They are incredibly slippery, so I poured them onto the mat to use the natural grip of the silicone to help me out. Initially, I was aiming for a more ambitious piece of wire crafting, hoping to create an intricate crisscross pattern inside the Eiffel Tower frame. Thankfully, humility kicked in. I realized I am not good at wire work, and I readjusted to a much simpler, cleaner technique. Working with UV resin and pigments is always a bit tricky, which is exactly why I usually avoid it. Luckily, I was able to clean up the spill and save my mat just in time. Sometimes things don't fit, like this boomerang-shaped shell piece that absolutely refused to find its place in the mosaic. I had a total case of butter pincers here, but nothing got ruined and I managed to rescue both the turtle embed and the resin. Right in the middle of sanding the sides, the pressure made the piece snap completely apart right along the plastic embed line. So I had to break out the glue and patch it back together.